Yeah, I originally thought this was tomorrow. It
I
was a little
understand.
confusing.
I understand it. So what I've done is I'm doing a cleanup. My cleanup, because I messed up, I fessed up. My cleanup is I will be on tomorrow for anybody who's not on today. And that's how we roll in the Gutless Gang. So again, guys, the book is called Unbroken. This is Louis Zamperini's story. As you all know, he was shot down during World War II and was at sea for 47 days. Now, what we're looking for on these calls, number one, analogies and epiphanies. How is their situation similar to our current situation? How are we better off than Louis and his crew were? What can we do to maintain our good fortune, quote unquote? Sharks in the water. These are the immediate problems that are present in your life, if any. How can you mitigate those threats? How can we support you? Number three is destroyer ships on the horizon. So, what are your fears about future threats? How can you mitigate those threats? How can we support you? Louis had some threats in his life, similar to ours. Number one was his health, water, food, the sun beaming down on them, dehydration, sunstroke, things like that. Ours is coronavirus, not getting it. What are we going to do if we do get it? How do we fortify our immune systems? Number two is sharks in the water. Those were his immediate threats. He literally had sharks circling under his boat. Those were not threats on the horizon. Those were immediate threats. Now, threats on the horizon are the things that you're afraid about and fearing that may happen in the future, but they may not happen. So, destroyer ships on the horizon. But those threats, be they imaginary or otherwise, have to be managed as well. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and share. Keep your shares relatively short. We have a smaller group, so we can be a little bit more generous in our shares. Pick 1 to 3. Today you can pick up to 3 of these topics to talk about. And I will start. We'll start with analogies. In the beginning of the book, they set the tone, they set the scene. So going into this, America was strong, right? Our economy was booming. Stock prices were racing towards an all-time high. Babe Ruth was knocking home runs out of the park. American pie was abundant. Everybody was happy. And then boom, World War II happened. It's a shit show, right? Everything is now uncertain. It's chaos. It's fear. It's anxiety. Guys are being shipped off to war. They're dying. They're not coming home. A lot of shit happening. So my analogy here is this is not new. We have been fortunate enough for most of us to not have to live through war times that required men getting drafted into the military. So we have been in many ways very fortunate. And now we see ourselves and find ourselves at war, different sort of war, but at war nonetheless. So remember, guys, we're not that unique. We're not that unique in this moment of crisis. This has been part of the American story for a long time. And in other countries like Bosnia and take your pick around the world, they're constantly at war. This is just new to us, but it's not new to our country. And we can get through this. Number two for me is Louis was terrified of flying. And then he found himself on a bomber for much of his time during World War II. And he said, but the speed and altitude frightened him. From that day on, he wanted nothing to do with airplanes. Now, this brings up a couple things for me. Solitude with practice can be mastered. And although that concept is terrifying for all of us because solitary confinement is actually a form of torture we still use to enforce and manipulate our prisoners into doing what we want them to do. Anything, even the things that are extremely hard at first, exercise, diet, changing behaviors, these things can be turned into strengths. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then they talk about a culling of the herd, eugenics. So we were experimenting with eugenics before the Nazis were. And as a society, we were killing the feeble-minded, the insane, and the criminal. So this is a biological pulling of the herd, and that's dark, I know, and I'm not in support of what's happening. But I just want you guys, all of us, myself included, to remember that this isn't the first time that we've been through this as a country. It's the first time for us in contemporary times as men. But we have gotten through this before, and we'll get through this again. That's my share today, guys. Who would like to go next?